everybody, welcome to Cali Girl Blog Talk. I'm Cali. Thank you for joining me. Let me start off by saying Happy New Year. I hope all of you who are listening have a blessed and prosperous new year. All right, today I will be reviewing Love and Marriage Huntsville Season 5, Episode 15, The Reunion Child, Part 1. All right, so let's get into it. So we start off with everybody arriving, to set. Everybody's in their dressing rooms, and Carlos King, he does his roundabout where he's going by everybody's dressing room about 45 minutes before taping begins, and he stops by talking about, what is your goal for this evening? Maurice said, my goal is to answer every question. KeKe said she didn't really have no goal. She just liked to sit back and watch the fireworks or what have you. Stopped by Marsau and Tisha's dressing room. Miss Wanda was in there, and he said, yeah, you brought the fireworks. And then Tisha was like, you know who brought the fireworks? And Carlos was like, who? And Tisha was like, the one with the Mr. T chain. And then they showed Mel at the Madani relaunch where Mel had on, her gold chain or what have you. Tisha cannot go without throwing a dig at Mel. She got condos in Tisha head. Okay. Anyway, then he goes by Mel's dressing room and he says, what's your goal for the day? Because the goal for the evening is love. And she said, well, my goal is if they go low, I'm going to hell. Anyway, he then stops by Martell's dressing room. Martell is on the phone, and he actually is on the phone with Sheree. And so he's like, Carlos was like, oh, let me talk to her right quick. And so he put her on speakerphone. She didn't know she was being recorded at first, and then she realized it after Carlos confirmed. And he said, is there anything that you could tell us about Martell that we could talk about on the reunion? And she was like, well, I mean, he's a gentleman. He's fine. He's a great dad. She enjoys spending time with him and what have you. And I said, okay, so Martell is really in this thing. And I guess Sheree is too, because at least I don't think that he knew that Carlos was going to stop by his dressing room at the time. But, he was talking to Sheree, child. So it looks like it may not be just for the ratings for this show, as well as when The Real Housewives of Atlanta begins to air. This will pretty much be a storyline for Sheree. So we'll see how that plays out, especially after the show is over, if her and Martell will still be together or if it was all just for storylines. Anyway, so after, she said he's a great dad. She enjoys spending time with him. She also said he's not what you see on TV. And Martell was like, oh, girl, you might get a ring for that. Carlos King, he hollered. And then he said, can I ask you one more question, Sheree? Are you in love with Martell? And she was like, Carlos, you are so nosy. And he was like, he started laughing. He said, but can you answer the question? She said, hello? Like they got a bad connection. And then, child, she hung up. Everyone makes it to set, okay? And I will say that the couples, the 6 of them, they look good. Everybody looks nice. I'm not going to go through each, outfit, who wore it the best, makeup, hair. Everybody looks nice, all right? Let's get to this reunion. So they start off with playing back footage, how everyone started off with their own individual businesses when it was in the baby stage, and seeing what it is today, how everyone has grown into their own individual success outside of them working together as a team. That whole real estate thing is just not happening with the 6 of them anymore. But individually, they have all succeeded in some way with their endeavors. So after the footage is played, Carlos says, okay, I just want to say that in the middle of everything being so dramatic for all of you, I do think that everyone on the stage is proud of each other's success, because it's not easy to do. Everybody's clapping, and Carlos noticed that Mel is not clapping. And he said, no clap for you. And she said, no. Said, not this year. I did that last year. I gave everybody praises, basically celebrating their successes. Last year it didn't air, but I did it. She said, this year I'm good. Maurice came through diplomatic, right? Talking about, I am proud of everybody's success, because what we do is not easy. We persevere and we have success in spite of. And so I'm proud of everybody. Mel said, make sure your actions show it. And I'm like, what's going on? What happened? KeKe said, well, when you say make sure your actions show it, like, what does that mean? And Mel was perturbed because she said they did an interview speaking about Maurice and KeKe. And she said Maurice downplayed her relationship with KeKe. And he said that they are not friends. She didn't appreciate that because in her mind, she thought they were friends or what have you. KeKe said she thinks with that one particular interview, they made more out of it than what it really was. They meaning social media. And she said, to be fair, Mel has done interviews and, then made it clear that we don't hang out like that. So she said the words were the same, but the way that it was delivered maybe was more distasteful. And so Carlos said, Kimmy, do you consider Mel a friend? Like, bottom line. Kimmy said, the people on this show, no, they're not my besties. However, I do consider Melody a friend. She said, because when I needed something, it happened. Period. She said the phone calls, the referrals, Maurice said the flowers, the food, the check-ins. So if you know all of this, Maurice, maybe it could have been phrased better, because to just make a general statement to the public and say that Mel and Kimmy are not friends, when knowing behind the scenes, Mel is extending her friendship in all of these various ways, there was a better way that you could have stated it. For example, no, they're not best friends, but Mel is they definitely have a friendship. Something like that. So I think Maurice knew what he was doing in that interview. You know, it's all stirring up drama, right? It's all stirring up drama for the show, because him being a lawyer and all of these things that he is, there's a better way to say things when you're speaking publicly about a castmate who behind the scenes is a friend. Especially if you did comparisons like Mel said, you compared your friendship with Martell, saying you guys check in all the time. Well, that's exactly what Mel, according to you and Kimmy, was doing for Kimmy. So why would you downplay it? So I get where Mel is coming from. You fronting, you know, on social media, but on the stage, you're trying to act all diplomatic. I get it. Kimmy continued and says, so looking at all of those things that Mel has done, that is what I consider friendship, and that is how I look at us. And Mel said, right. And that's why I was offended by Maurice's statement, because you know behind the scenes all that I've been doing, you know, to make sure Kimmy is good. And when the question was posed to them in the interview, you should have let Kimmy answer the question, Maurice. You didn't have to jump in. Like I said, he knew what he was doing. He was stirring up drama, but then on stage, he wants to come through diplomatic with the Martin Luther King Jr. speeches, as Mel stated. Carlos was like, Maurice, do you understand how Mel could have felt that way? How, you know, it could have been misunderstanding and misconstrued. And he said, I can see how she could feel a way. I heard a but coming. And then Kimmy jumped in saying, well, we just can't keep writing everybody off because of a statement. Because when they was on your show, The Nightcap, talking to Carlos, Mel said Maurice was the least relevant on the show. Child, she did. But to be fair, Kimmy, she didn't just say that out of nowhere like it was nobody and then Mel just made the statement. It was a clap back to what Maurice said to her, saying that she is always the centerpiece of the drama. She is not the centerpiece of the drama. You all make her the centerpiece of the drama. Okay? Again, it's how you word things. So you came for her, she came for you. Even exchange as far as I'm concerned. Moving on, Carlos turns to Tisha and Marsau, and he says, so, you know, this season, one of the things for you guys, as far as your storyline goes, is the Scott Manor has now turned out to be the new Chateau Charest. Whereas now people are just calling it Neverland. Not Neverland. I didn't know that. Carlos says, so what's up with Scott Manor? And Marsau basically said, you know, sometimes when you're building something and it's going to be great, sometimes it takes more time than expected. But we about to get to it. We about to start blasting rock, you know, moving concrete around or what have you. Carlos said, okay, so season 23 is when we'll see the completion. Carlos ain't gonna never miss a moment to be shady. Fun shade, right? Carlos then said, Tisha, you started off this entire series as a housewife, and a lot of people were surprised to learn that you are actually the majority owner of Sculpt. So what did you do to what did you do to make that happen in your marriage? Tisha said, well, never underestimate the power within the wife. That's one. Two, all I had to do was buy Martell out and then change up that paperwork. Martell said, and that was the worst decision that I ever made. Carlos said, Martell, do you regret being bought out? And he said, no, that was the plan for me. Here go, Tisha, he should. Carlos said, well, why? Wait a minute. Why should Martell regret it? And Tisha said, because when we bought him out, the company was in a negative, but now it's a multi-million-dollar company. And Carlos said, oh, that wasn't fun shade, honey. That was shade. Palm tree. Tisha said, and we bought him out for pennies on the dollar. And I'm like, whoa, Tisha, are you mad at Martell? Because you really out here putting his business out, honey, like you have a vendetta. Martell said, if anything, Tisha should be thanking me because I helped start a company and we're basically going to match what Holt & Holt was doing. You know, the business that him and Melody had at one time. He said, it takes a lot for companies to see positive. It can take 4 to 5 years before that happens. So it's nothing new for someone to say, hey, the the company was in a negative. And that's true. Everybody, well, I won't say everybody, but I have heard of a lot of people who start their businesses and those first few years are rough because at the end of the day, you're spending way more money and your ROI, return on investment, you might not see it coming in the way that you hoped for within the first couple of years, but you just got to keep dumping that money into it and building the foundation before you see that turnaround in several cases. Carlos turned to Melody and he said, is it true what Martell is saying about, what happened with Skulk? Mel said, I don't know what the numbers were looking like, but I do know that I was making sure that the company did receive nice sized jobs, money. And she said, I made sure that happened. But what happened with the money after that, I don't know. Marsau chimed in and said both Melody and Martell brought their experience to the table. And that's why I wanted to go into the business. I also came to the table with my experience. Okay. So at the end of the day, it was always 50-50. But if you listen to it from Tisha's perspective, it's almost like she's trying to paint the narrative that the company was in the red and in the negative all because of Martell. And that's suddenly because she bought him out. Now the company is in tip-top shape. When Marsau said at the end of the day, it was always 50-50. Everybody brought something to the table to make the company what it was. And Tisha gave him a look like, really? She gave him a look like either that's BS or she gave him a look like, so you just not gonna have my back again? Every time I try to throw a little shade, you're gonna always come through for your boy Martell. Carlos moved on and said, Marsau, in the beginning, it was a struggle for you to come to terms with working with Tisha. So how has it been since she's gotten out of the kitchen and decided to really work? She put down the pan and picked up a tool. So how is that working out now? Marsau, being Marsau, said, I don't feel any ways different. I still prefer her not to be doing this. He said, I want her to come into her own right, but it is difficult working with the wife in business. Tisha said, I want some successful couples to reach out to us and tell us what's the best way to separate business and home life. I can say it's not for everybody. People say, oh, if it's this and it's that, then you can do it. It really depends. You wake up to the person, then you go into the office with the person, then you come back home with the person. There's no degrees of separation whatsoever every day. And married or not, everybody wants their little bit of individual space. That's why women have she sheds and men have man caves, etc. So I get it. I think it's a depending factor, meaning it depends on the couple. Carlos said, well, there's a lot of talk and a lot of chatter online about this lawsuit that you guys have going on with another corporation. Can you all shed some light on what's that about? Being transparent, Marsau said, well, I can just say this, that it's a hurtful kind of embarrassing thing for me because of the conditions surrounding it, how this thing happened in the first place. This is one of my first biggest deals. And I get this big deal and immediately the world shuts down because of the pandemic. And that's within 1 month after signing the contract. And this all happened while I'm starting the company with Black. I'm opening a restaurant. And Tisha said, I just hate that we're facing this because Marsau really did work hard on the project, which was one of the reasons why he went to Africa. I said, oh. He just went to Africa because he needed time to get away. Do y'all be with the foolishness for the storylines too, Tisha and Marsau? Here go Martell saying, well, we all said, wait a minute, that's why he went to Africa? Tisha didn't respond right away. And Martell said, you said he went to Africa. You saying that's why he went to Africa? Tisha said, well, it was one of the reasons. Marsau said, well, it was just a lot, and I was really drained. It was draining me. Here go Martell. See, he not gonna miss a moment because Tisha, you came for him. Okay. Again, 5 minutes ago, you just made it seem like the whole company was falling apart because of Martell. So now it's his turn. And he said, so you going to Africa, Marsau, all of that draining you, it took time away from home. Now, Martell, you did a lot outside the home too, but that's a dead conversation, child. We all know what happened. Tisha caught what he was saying and she said, well, you know what? He wasn't at the gym. Again, like I said, we all know what happened. Martell claimed he was always at the gym. Yeah, he was working out all right, but it wasn't at the gym. Getting back to the question, Carlos said, Martell, was that shade you throwing? And Martell said, no. I'm just saying, what is she saying? He went to Africa because it was draining that he wasn't spending time at home. Tisha said, no, Martell, it was because of the project. Carlos said, all jokes aside, Tisha, how did you feel knowing that your husband wanted to go 16 hours away and be by himself? Tisha said, I was upset at first because I was like, why would you do this by yourself? This is something that we always said we wanted to do as a family. And I can see that if that's something that you guys said you always wanted to do as a family, we want to go to Africa, we want to take our kids. I mean, that's big for a lot of people. And if you wanted to just get away, there are plenty of places that you could have gone, but you did not have to go to Africa. That's one point. The other point is you went by yourself, but let's continue to hear what Tisha had to say because I'm watching this as I'm recording. She said, but once he explained to me how stressed out he was over the project, meanwhile, they put the camera on Martell. Martell has his eyes closed and he's just shaking his head like, oh, good gracious. That's what she fell for. Okay. All right. They put the camera on Mel. Mel is just looking off into the distance like this child here. Oh, good gracious. Tisha continued on saying, once Marsau explained how he was stressed out about the project and everything, that's when I started to understand. They put the camera on KeKe. She's looking at Tisha, and then next thing you know, her eyes kind of wanders off like, girl, so he told you that and you rode with it. Tisha continuing and saying, so I understood that's what he needed. He needed his alone time. Then she went on her normal trust campaign. I trust my husband. I wouldn't be married to Marsau if I didn't trust him. Martell can't even look at her. He's looking directly at Carlos, and it looks like he's trying to hold in a snicker. A laugh, I mean. Carlos turns to KeKe and says, KeKe, would you be okay with Maurice going to Africa? Immediately and emphatically, before Carlos can even finish saying the word Africa, KeKe said no. Carlos said, okay. Even Maurice noticed the swiftness in how KeKe answered that question. He laughed and said, dang, that was too fast. Chuckling a little bit with Maurice, Carlos said, Tisha, a lot of people feel this way, you know, and my thing is with you, it's obvious you're a smart woman. You have several degrees. You're the majority owner of a multi-million-dollar business. But a lot of people expressed that a statement that you made was very naive of you when you said, oh, if Marsau is cheating, God will reveal it to me. And before I move on, let me just pause for a minute. Why do people put the responsibility of you coming to a revelation about something on God when all the signs are there to at least question what's going on? I had someone back in the day tell me that, you know, they are continuing in a certain lifestyle until God tells them to stop. And I'm like, as if your body, your health, your lungs, so on and so forth, is not telling you already. Girl, that is God. God speaks through signs and wonders, honey. There are always signs and wonders, even if you don't hear anything audibly coming through in your ear. So don't put that responsibility on God. We all do what we want to do, and we avoid what we want to avoid. Bottom line. Tisha said, well, these rumors have been going around for 5 years. And nothing has come to light. Nothing has been revealed to me. I'm like, by who? People or God? Who are we talking about now? Carlos said, well, Martell revealed that Marsau had 20 girlfriends. Tisha said, but where are the pictures? Basically, where are the receipts of all this? There's all these claims, but I haven't seen any receipts. Carlos said, well, there is a picture out there that is allegedly of his back. We've all seen the picture, right? Marsau said, that wasn't my back. Carlos said, no, I said allegedly. Tisha said, so people want me to leave my husband and my family because somebody put a picture of somebody's back on social media? Tisha said, yeah, if he got 20 girlfriends, you don't have not one front picture of him, like a picture of somebody's back. She said, however, when Martell was caught cheating, everything came out. Well, yeah, I mean, receipts were everywhere. However, that may have just been Martell's time for everything to come on out. Not saying that Marsau is doing anything. I'm just saying, be careful when you compare your situation to somebody else's situation and be like, well, that hasn't happened to me, because the key word could be yet. Martell said, well, everything came out because Mel put it out there for everybody to know. And Tisha said, yeah, but I'm saying that there was receipts for her to put out in the first place. When it comes to me and Marsau, there isn't anything. There are no receipts. Dragging Mel into it, Tisha said, believe me, if Mel and Martell had any proof, they would have put it out. Leaving Mel out of it, Carlos said, Martell, do you have any proof of anything? And Martell said, no, I wouldn't put anything out. Carlos said, so Tisha, you mean to tell me that in your mind, there's absolutely no doubt that this could even be a possibility? You know, this thing that Martell said, whether it's 20 women, 5 women, 1 woman. Do you believe that there is not even a possibility that it could be true? She said, no, I have no no doubt. She said, look, I know Mel and Martell's personality. Martell said, well, wait a minute, what's my personality? Tisha said, do you see how much information they've put out on each other on social media? She said, so knowing how upset they were with us, if they had any type of receipts, they would have put it out. Doing her best to get at Mel, she's using Martell and said, yeah, he even texted me his receipts. Carlos said, well, what was the text? And she said, oh, that he's been with the woman for over 4 years. He bought her a Mercedes. Martell said, wait a minute, I said that? Martell said, okay, wait a minute, I don't recall that. He said, girl, stop lying. Talking to Carlos, she said, so they call me naive, but tell me any woman that will divorce her husband just because you guys said so, and therefore it must be true. Carlos said, well, Mel, when you told Tisha that Marsau had been cheating on her, were you lying? Tisha looked like she was holding her breath, and Mel said, no. Carlos continued to probe and said, do you know for a fact that Marsau has cheated on Tisha? Mel countered and said, let me ask you a question because you all have been privy to different conversations. Carlos said, I personally have never been privy to a woman telling me that she was having an affair with Marsau. Mel said, I was on the phone with you talking and she was with me. I guess Mel said, wait a minute, child. Let me refresh your memory now. Hold up. You can see Carlos trying to remember, and Mel said, remember this was early on. And Tisha said, oh, is that the one she tried to pay to bring on the show? Mel said, oh no, honey, I didn't pay anybody to bring on a show. Tisha said, you have tried to pay multiple people to come on the show. I guess Carlos remembered the conversation that Mel was referring to because he said, okay, let me say this. It was out there that there was a woman who was having an affair with Marsau. Tisha said, Mel tweeted it and then the girl called me. And she said her and Mel were best friends and she was so hurt about what Mel did and she called me and said, Tisha, I would never do that. She said, I never told Mel that. And I'm so sad that this was my friend. And she would go as far as to try to ruin my reputation like this. Tisha said, I have all the receipts, the phone calls and the text messages. She said, I have receipts that Mel tried to pay the girl $5,000 to come on the show. And the girl told Mel, no, I'm not coming on there to lie. And she told Tisha, had it been more money, I probably would have considered it. But I said, no, $5,000 is not worth my business. Mel said, let me be very clear. There was a girls' trip that was being planned. And part of the girls' trip was, would this woman be willing to come on the girls' trip? She said, and I have the text showing that that question was asked. And on the girls' trip, the woman was going to tell Tisha, giving the explanation that, hey, I didn't know Marsau was married. Mel said, and this was years ago before I even knew them. She said the response that was given was, if y'all want me to come on this girls trip, I'm going to need some money. Mel said, I told her, hey, you got to talk to production about that because that's not my call. She said, I'm not paying nobody to come on. And then Marsau interrupted and said, Carlos, can I ask you a question? How would Mel know what this woman was going to come on the show and say? Mel said, because we had conversations. Marsau said, well, how did the conversation start? Mel said, that's none of your business. He said, well, if you're going to tell the story, tell the story. Here go, Tisha, tell the story. And I'm thinking, Tisha, do you really want her to tell the story? If there is one. They told Mel, tell the full story. Marsau started going into that drilling, rant, raving type questioning where he's just throwing questions at you, but never even giving you a chance to answer. He did the same thing when last season at Wanda's food little gathering or whatever, which she had with her family, and KeKe was about to expose, and he was going off throwing those questions at KeKe. What's this? How's this? What's this? He did the exact same thing. So you can see a pattern because he's doing the exact same thing to Mel. You want to know the full story, but you're throwing these questions at her where nobody can get a word in, and you keep raising your voice an octave as you pose each question. You are super triggered. She said, let me be very clear. You're not being very clear. You're not even giving her a chance to speak because you don't want her to. You really don't. She said, if you will hush, maybe I can answer the question. He said, you're making up a story. Tisha said, it sounds good. Mel looked at Carlos and said, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and argue with legs, hips, and breasts. I'm good. And I can guarantee you nobody, including us, expected that response. Legs, hips, and breasts. You go low, I'm going to hell, is what Mel said when she was in that dressing room. And the way he was badgering her, That would literally be called badgering the witness. You want the witness to speak or you don't. And it's obvious that you didn't. So you pulled a classic Marsau and you got what you think you wanted, which was to make her stop talking. However, to the viewers, you just keep telling on yourself. You wanted the full story, yet she didn't even get half of the story out, Marsau. Carlos said, okay, look, there seems to be this odd conversation that's taking place. You think Mel is making stuff up about some woman. Tisha said, I know, honey. I don't think, I know. He said, however, Mel feels strongly that she has information that was going to come out on the show. Either it was or it wasn't. But I will say this. In the beginning of this season, there supposedly was an off-camera meeting that took place before we started filming. And I have to say allegedly because I wasn't there. But there was a conversation about what was off limits. They all agreed that's true, and Martell said yes. And from KeKe, one of the things was, don't talk about Maurice hanging out after 4 o'clock. And KeKe said, you're absolutely correct, 100% right. I did say that. Carlos said, and KeKe, why is it that Maurice hanging out after 4 o'clock something that we had to leave off the table? What's that about? Marsau is sitting straight up, shoulders back, talking about it, and we didn't have nothing to hide. We didn't have to say, did we? And Tisha, and we've always been open and honest the whole time. They not even talking to you. He talking to KeKe. But anyway, you know, they have to let it be known that they are fully transparent and there's nothing going on. They fighting hard for their image. Go off. Anyway, back to the question, Carlos said, why did that have to be left off the table, what Maurice does after 4 o'clock? And KeKe said, because I don't like it. It can be misleading to women. And I'm like, what can be misleading to women? Moving on, Carlos said, what about these rumors regarding Credit One that's going on? What about that? Because the streets are talking and supposedly there are sex parties that were taking place after hours at Credit One. Maurice gives a look like, man, please. Marsau sort of smirks, not realizing the camera is on him. And Martell is looking dead at Maurice like, I want to see how he gonna get out of this one. Carlos said, I mean, there's a lot of tweets that are saying this. Marsau said, is there a name behind this? Maurice said, well, you know what? I actually started doing homework. Answering Marsau's question, KeKe said, oh, no, you don't need names. Continuing, Maurice said, so I started doing homework, I guess at the office. And some people might find themselves in a lawsuit if you keep running that narrative. KeKe says, let's keep it a buck. Okay, you want to keep it a buck? We're going to keep it a buck. My office used to be located above Credit One and there were no sex parties. She said, however, him, you, pointing to Maurice, and immediately Martell just busts out and starts laughing. KeKe continued, you, Maurice, Sadarik, Martell, you guys all like to hang out, including Marsau. Now, KeKe's voice is starting to raise up in octaves. And she said, they all wanted to hang out. Part of the reason why they wanted Black was because they wanted a place where they can go and hang out. And KeKe stepping in instead of allowing Maurice to fully answer the question about what was going on in his business, it almost sounds just like Tisha said, well, he wanted to go to Africa because he was drained about the project. Now, you want to chime in for your husband, that's fine, but it really would have been great if we could see these men answer the questions that were directed to them. Let them answer. Let them give the full explanation. But, you know, like I said about Tisha and Marsau, I'm going to say the same thing to KeKe. Girl, go off. So again, they like to go and have a place so they can hang out. And Carlos said, and do what? She said, listen to music, play cards, you know. And Carlos said, listen, KeKe, let me tell you something. I may be a gay man, and here go Martell. Oh, but she naive too. Carlos said, I may be a gay man, but I can assure you that no man is hanging out after hours listening to Beyonce's Renaissance album. Never letting a moment pass by, Martell said, yeah, grown men at 4 o'clock in the morning. Carlos said, they are not listening to music. They're not listening to music. Now trying to defend herself, KeKe said, well, at the time, he was not my man. Carlos said, okay, so you guys were not dating at the time. Let's start there. She said, no, we were not. Even though he wasn't my man, because I was upstairs, I knew that they would always have these functions that take place downstairs. And Carlos said, and then would have women being there. Women were involved. KeKe said, no, that's the thing. It was just a whole bunch of guys. Carlos is looking at her like, girl, what? Here go Marsau trying to defend himself. Let's just be clear. Let's put it out there that Marsau was there a lot less than everyone else. If it was all just fun and games and just the guys, why do you have to clear your name, Marsau? Good gracious. The three of them, Marsau, Martell, and Maurice, they got a lot of each other's skeletons. That's obvious. Don't know what all these skeletons are? Well, we know what Martells are, but between Marsau and Maurice, there's a lot of skeletons, and Martell knows about them. Again, Marsau was like, let's just put it out there that Marsau was there a lot less than everybody else. Kimmy said, but we not gonna act like you wasn't there, okay? You was there. Ready to squash the conversation, Maurice said, look, I'm just gonna be clear. We did not have any parties like that at Credit One, and somebody's gonna find themselves in a lawsuit if they keep getting around. Carlos said, okay, well, there seems to be this level of respect, albeit small, that you guys are not willing to go dark and just expose people. Marsau and Tisha was like, oh no, that's not true. Marsau said everything that they would have, talking about Martell and Mel, everything that they would have, they would throw it against us. Okay, they would throw it at us. And Martell said, who are they? And Marsau said, we have never brought up anything about them. Again, Martell said, who are they? And Marsau said, when you brought up the 20 women thing. Now, if we remember that episode, that was the episode where Marsau was taunting Martell about what was going on with him and Mel. And Martell was like, look, don't get too cocky about my marriage falling apart, okay? Because it can go both ways, bruh. You laughing because my stuff is out there, but I could clearly put some information out on you. For example, your 20 women. So you gotta, if you're gonna tell the story, tell the whole story, Marsau. Anyway, Martell said, look, like Carlos said, there are certain things that us, meaning the guys, that we know and we are never going to expose. Which goes back to what I just said a short time ago, and that is they know a lot about each other's skeletons. It's just that Martells have all fallen out of the closet. He should feel a sense of freedom. They're the ones that's working hard to keep their skeletons in the closet. And like Martell said, there are things we know that we will never expose. So don't sit there and make it seem like, oh, if Mel and Martell had anything, they would put it out there on us. Because I really haven't unleashed what I really know, is basically what he was saying. Carlos said, okay, well, Martell, when you threw that accusation out that Marsau has 20 women, was there any truth to that accusation? Not wanting to expose anything, now Martell is kind of like, well, you know, I mean, I don't know the exact number. I mean, well, Carlos said, has he been with one woman since he's been married? Martell looked at him like, come on, Carlos, what are you doing, man? Why are you asking me this? Come on, don't put me in the hot seat about this man's marriage. I just told you on this stage in front of everybody that there are things that we know, the guys, and we will never expose. So how you gonna turn around and ask me this question, Carlos? The question remained because nobody said anything. Has he been with one woman? Coming to the rescue, Tisha said, yeah, it's me. I'm the one. Martell said, whew, good job, Tisha. He was like, whew, huh. I was sweating on my forehead. Left me off the hook. Thank you, Tisha. Good job. Not giving up on the question, just rephrasing it. Carlos said, have you known Marsau to be with any other woman besides Tisha? Instead of saying yes and instead of saying no, Martell just said, I'm not going to speak on that. I'm pleading the fifth. I don't have anything to say about that. Well, to me, you said something without saying it. He went all the way back to what, first season? Maybe it was the beginning of second season, but I believe it was the first season where this also came out. And Carlos said, have you and Martell ever had an apartment together? Marsau said, me and Martell never owned an apartment. We never owned a piece of real estate. We never owned anything besides scope. Now he's doing that fast talking again. Tisha is looking like Marsau is doing his thing again. I know this pattern. Maurice said, no, you guys did own Stag Run. Marsau said, no, we didn't. Maurice said, yes, you did. Tisha confused, talking about Stag Run. Maurice said, yes, you did. And Marsau is looking like, bruh, what are you doing? Now the two brothers, Scott and Scott, are going back and forth. Marsau, no, I didn't. No, we didn't. Maurice, yes, you did. Martell is just smirking. Kimmy said, collectively. Okay, we all did. Maurice said, that's the only piece of property that I know of. So Maurice is with the shenanigans. So he's doing the same thing that he did on that interview when Kimmy was asked about her friendship with Mel. He's using his words to play games, because instead of saying, well, we all owned something together, he phrased it in a way to Marsau that you and Martell owned this business, just the two of you. Maurice is very sneaky because he plays like he's diplomatic, but he uses his words to undercut you in a very subtle way. Feeling relieved, Marsau said, well, yeah, the comeback group, we own something. Martell said, we never shared an apartment. We never had an apartment. Marsau said, a lot of people say things, they pretty much pull it out of the sky. They pretty much feel like where there's smoke, there's fire. So there has to be something. And I'll just say there is a lot of smoke, which appears to be a fire somewhere here, there, everywhere. But because all of you have your back, the guys, to a certain extent, we, the viewers, will never really know. While I'm sure the women in your relationships know full well what has happened and maybe not some of the things that has happened. Because if we, the viewers, are sitting here like, what in the hell? The shenanigans are thick when it comes to this group. And everybody ain't transparent as they want everybody to believe. I'm talking in regards to the Scotts, because we pretty much know all there is to know about Martell and Mel. And if we heard something else, we just really wouldn't be surprised and would pretty much be over it. But when it comes to these Scotts, I don't know if it's a full explosion, but there's some smoke. And because of that, Carlos said, look, I don't have a pact with all of you guys. This is just me on the outside looking in. And based on me having common sense, I believe that there is some truth to some of these rumors. And some of this has been spilled out by all of you guys in one way or another. And my thing with you, Tisha, is I think you're at a place in your life where you're learning your worth. And I think that you are doing everything you can to make sure that your husband is believable. Because if it ever came out that all of these things were true, some of these things, whatever, if there was truth to these rumors and it came out, I don't think that you would be ready to deal with the reality. And I think we, the viewers, all believe that. Now, understanding that's not a reality that anybody wants to face. Tisha said, of course, if I found out that he was cheating on me, I would be devastated. She said, I built my whole life around us, but at the end of the day, all I can do is trust my husband. But if Martell came to me and said, look, I got a picture. Okay. If he came to me with a receipt saying, here's a picture of Marsau and this woman, and they're doing things like kissing or whatever, she said, that's something totally different. She said, I haven't had any of that. And Carlos said, okay, so when you saw Chris Fletcher saying he wasn't with Marsau, she said, well, Chris said he was with Marsau for 2 hours. And Marsau said, that's fact. He said, and when you saw Chris Fletcher make those statements, it does nothing. And she said, nothing. It does nothing to me. I'm going to ride with my husband until they bring me some evidence. She said, so call me whatever, naive Tisha, stupid Tisha, whatever. Carlos said, okay, well, if you did find out that Marsau was cheating on you, whether it was 5, 6, 8 years ago, would you leave him? She gave 2 different answers. First, she said, if I found out that Marsau cheated on me, we would handle the situation. She followed that up and said, and I probably would leave him because that's a non-negotiable when it comes to our relationship. She said, I've never cheated on my husband and I expect the same loyalty and faithfulness from him. She continued and said, so it's not like I'm just turning a blind eye, because if it happens, I'm going to deal with it. Carlos said, okay, well, look, I'm happy that we were able to address this. And I am too, because let Tisha live in whatever reality she wants to live in. It's her reality. Let her live in it. Moving on. Carlos continued and said, I'm glad we were able to address this. Though Tisha and Marsau have struggled to stay ahead of these rumors, there is one family member that says she has some news, and in comes KeKe. Do you love me? Are you riding? Here comes KeKe. All right, time for Marsau to get hyphy all over again. KeKe quietly walks in without her name being announced. She sits next to Maurice, and Maurice's eyes got big like, what? What? Whoa! And he speaks like, hey, but he's looking like, what is about to happen? Anyway, that's when Carlos introduces her as Letitia's cousin, KeKe. Okay, let's welcome her to the stage, along with Wanda. Woo! So he greets both of them and he says, KeKe, welcome to the stage. It's your first reunion. Are you nervous? And KeKe said, actually, I'm not. I'm quite excited. Carlos said, you're excited? Okay, talk to me in 20 minutes. Like, once we get past this segment, then let me know how you feel about it. Carlos said, all jokes aside, when KeKe came on the scene, she dove head first into Tisha and Marsau's personal drama. And they flash back to Mel's pajama party. that took place at the beginning of the season. And KeKe was there and she said, so where's the other Mrs. Scott, talking to Kimmy? She said, have you talked to Letitia? Kimmy said, well, it's Melody's party and she made her choices. In other words, Tisha wasn't invited. And it showed Kimmy at the time in her confessional saying, I'm not sure how Tisha is going to react to the fact that KeKe got an invite, but she didn't. They jumped to the part of the scene where the conversation was going on about Marsau and Tisha, and Mel asked the question and she said, well, do you feel like there's, been any inclination on Tisha's part regarding these rumors that are going on about Marsau? Because you're her cousin, you've been around her. And in the scene, KeKe said, Tisha's truth is she has not seen anything that could confirm what Marsau is being accused of. Jumping to the next scene that includes Tisha and KeKe talking, Tisha said, I thought we was good. And KeKe said, I thought so too, until that last situation when you and Marsau went around and was telling my personal business. And it jumped to the next scene where KeKe was talking to Mel and she said, so my thing was, what was the point of Tisha and Marsau telling you that at one time I was addicted to pain prescriptions? And we all know that came out, that she was addicted to pain medication, as many people are. They start taking pain medication for, they may have gotten hurt, accidents, whatever. You get prescribed medication and then you continue to take it. And then some people fall into addiction. It happens. Anyway, they put that information out there to Mel. And KeKe's point is, what was the purpose of doing that? And Mel said, yeah, KeKe, they made it seem like it was a joke. Your addiction was a joke. They was like, make sure you put your pills up. Make sure you lock them pills up, y'all. They showed Tisha and Marsau in a past confessional where Tisha said, Mel is using KeKe. Okay, this whole friendship is just Mel using her. Jumping all the way to the scene that took place when Wanda had the family gathering, when she was opening up her, food truck business and stuff. And when Tisha, KeKe, and Marsau got into it, and Tisha was accusing KeKe of lying, talking about you went behind my back. And KeKe was like, and y'all went behind my back. See, like I said, it's a lot of even exchange type of thing. So y'all exposed her personal business. So she didn't feel no qualms about exposing your personal business. Marsau said the whole city of Huntsville knew your business. KeKe told him, you better watch out. Okay. Cause I'll bring it all out if I have to. Like, don't push me cause I'm close to the edge. All right. I'm trying, but you gonna make me lose my head about your business. You better leave me alone, Marsau. You talking a little too cocky about my business and my addiction. You a little too cocky. In the scene when KeKe said, I'll bring it out if I have to, Marsau went ballistic. They showing Martell's face as he's watching the scene and he like, bruh. And I'm like, maybe he didn't see this episode or whatever. I don't know. But Marsau was going off. Do it. Say whatever you want. I'll burn this down. He's standing up in his seat. He is going off. While everybody, including Wanda, is like, KeKe, please don't do it. Please don't do it. Don't do it. Ain't nobody talking to Marsau. Everybody is talking to KeKe like, no, girl, please. Oh, gosh, don't do it. So after that explosive footage was shown, I say explosive because it was Marsau that was explosive. Back at the reunion, Carlos said, so one of the questions that came in for you, Mel, regarding the situation is, why did you invite KeKe to your party knowing that was Tisha's cousin? Mel said, I met KeKe before I even met Tisha because we have a mutual friend. Okay, I met her through my best friend. So I invited her to my Christmas party. Carlos said, Tisha, you said you believe that Mel brought KeKe around to come for you. Tisha said, and she did. She did. Carlos said, and Mel, you wanted KeKe to come on the show and talk about Tisha. Mel said, I knew that KeKe's experiences with Tisha had been very similar to my experiences with her and how Tisha moves. So her and KeKe had a conversation about the actions that Tisha was taking, and she called KeKe. They on the phone and she was like, girl, can you believe she did this, and ran everything down? And KeKe had the same experiences. Mel told KeKe, I might need you to come on the show and express your experiences because these things that Tisha is doing is straight up ridiculous. So yeah, it was a strategy. She didn't say that, but I did. Marsau said something. I couldn't really make it out. He was talking a little fast and they bleeped out part of what he said. And Mel responded and said, we're not going to talk about all the people that you've brought on the show to come for me. And Tisha said, no, we talking about KeKe in this situation. So let's just stay focused on KeKe. Mel said, I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. Mel said, said, girl, please, we know who you have to do your dirty work. And they put the camera right on Wanda. And she does. Tisha said, KeKe, didn't you tell me that Mel hired somebody at the state of Alabama to pull my and Marsau's records? KeKe is looking like, girl, wait a minute. I don't know what you're talking about. I never remember saying nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. Tisha said, KeKe, you said that Mel knows somebody that works at the courthouse and she got them to pull our records. KeKe said, I said that? Mel said, I don't even know nobody that work at the courthouse. And KeKe said, I did not say that. And Tisha said, oh, okay, so you want to be Mel's puppet today. She said, I'm going to let y'all have it. And then she got up and started leaving the stage. Carlos is like, Tisha, like, wait a minute, where are you going? KeKe stood up and said, oh, no, honey, I am nobody's puppet, honey. I am KeKe. I own KeKe. Like, I ain't nobody's puppet. Carlos gets up to try to go catch Tisha. She's continuing to walk off the set. And then Marsau goes to follow behind her. KeKe said, the only thing that Mel asked me about was when Marsau had that accident. And she was like, what car was he in? She said, and I told her what car. And Mel said, okay, well, that was casual conversation. And you guys filmed that. Meanwhile, here comes Tisha out with puppets. Everybody bringing props to the stage on these shows. So this is Tisha's prop where she thinks she's getting ready to make a big statement. So let me keep watching and see where this leads. So the puppets have on black pajamas, and I guess it's supposed to be a puppet of Mel and it's supposed to be a puppet of KeKe. KeKe said, look at this that Tisha brought out. Honey, she came out here with her twin, a puppet. Let me tell you how ridiculous Tisha looks in this moment. She's holding the hand puppets and she's imitating Mel, saying, KeKe, have you ever witnessed Marsau cheating before 2018? No disrespect, but she looked like a whole fool sitting on this stage. Who did not try to talk her out of this? I mean, it's weave all on the puppets' heads and everything like that. One of them resembles Mel's classic cut, from first season. And the other one is supposed to be KeKe. Tisha looks desperate. In one word, lost. Looking at her play with those puppets, Mel said, child, Tisha has been around the kids too long, baby. Telling you, Tisha, it's not giving what you thought it was going to give. It's giving dumb is what it's giving. Dumb with a B. Okay, and you don't even include the B when you're sounding it out. It's silent. But you don't just look dumb, you look dumb, okay? Carlos said, Tisha, I didn't make room for 2 additional guests, but let me ask you, is the one with the blonde, is that supposed to be Mel? Marsau says, this is for entertainment purposes only. It's not entertaining, it's giving dumb and desperate. It's giving, I'm doing everything to deflect. Everything that I possibly can. That's what it's giving. It's not giving entertainment. That's a huge fail and a big no. Everybody's laughing, but they're not laughing with you. They're laughing at you, Tisha. They're laughing at you, girl. Kimmy said, and Tisha has a straight face while she's doing this. Carlos said, and that's the problem, okay? It's the straight face for me while I'm trying to be serious. He said, so Tisha, with all of these antics, are you inferring that you feel that KeKe is Melody's puppet? Tisha said yes, and then went right back to the puppets. Can you come on the show and talk about your cousin? She turns to the puppet of KeKe and say, yes, I will. What would you like me to say? When I tell you that this is, oh my gosh. The only person that should be playing with puppets are those on Sesame Street. This is one of the saddest things that I've ever seen on a reunion. Mel said, child, can we get some kids in here for her? Acting as the puppet of Mel, Tisha said, let's talk about her husband. And then she gets up to put the puppets away, and Carlos clowns and says, okay, thank you, Tisha, for your arts and crafts moment at the talent show. And again, people are laughing, but don't misunderstand being laughed at and replace it with being laughed along with. No, they're laughing at you, boo. He let Tisha know that while you were off stage getting your puppets, KeKe said that Mel did call her to ask about what happened with the accident and, what car was he in, trying to get the details about the car accident, and that was filmed. KeKe said yes. In other words, there was no truth to the claim of, I'm going to go down to the courthouse and get these records pulled about Marsau and Tisha. Tisha said, why did she call KeKe? She could have called Kimmy and Maurice. Mel said, I call whoever I want to call. Marsau said, the only thing that I believe is that you really wanted to know because you were trying to figure out how could I afford a car like that because you thought I was broke. Melody said, what? Marsau said, it was communicated to me from KeKe that Mel said, how can he afford a car like that? Child, I thought he was broke. Now, she might have been throwing shade and said that because Carlos said, did she say that? And KeKe said, yeah, she might have been, there might have been a question of, how can he afford a car like that or what have you. KeKe said, I don't remember verbatim. And Carlos called her out and said, it does appear that you're playing double agent because, and I will agree, because you running down conversations with Mel about them, but then you running back and telling the Scotts a narrative about what Mel said. So you do appear to play double agent, Miss KeKe. He said, and it appears that way. So what was your agenda with doing all that? KeKe said, I was just trying to be open and honest. Okay. She said, it was my intention to let Tisha know that there was nothing between me and Melody and our relationship that would be a threat to my relationship with her, meaning Tisha. She said, so I would go and talk to her about certain things because there was nothing for me to hide. That being the case, Mel, if you continue to talk to this woman, watch what you say. Because where you think you guys are having a conversation, throwing a little shade or whatever, she's running back what you're saying and paraphrasing it in the way that she wants to, and then saying, I have nothing to hide. Well, of course you have nothing to hide because you're not saying that you were in on the shade. You are just talking about the shade coming from Melody. You're playing double agent for sure. Carlos said, Tisha, you and Melody grew up basically as sisters. So did this thing fall apart between you and KeKe because of Mel? They both said no. Tisha said, have I purposely ever tried to hurt you? And KeKe said, oh, so I purposely tried to hurt you? Tisha said, facts. If you're talking about my marriage and you knew what I was going through, that's you trying to hurt me. KeKe said, look, when Mel asked me the question about you and Marsau at her party, I paused and thought about it before I answered. Carlos said, what made you pause and think about it instead of just answering the question? She said, because I knew what she was dealing with and I didn't want to basically make anything worse and throw them under the bus. Carlos said, is that a better way of saying that when you answer the question, you weren't really telling the entire truth? KeKe said, no, I was saying they dealt with things just like any other couple. Carlos said, okay, well, what have they dealt with like you? Since you're talking about just like any other couple, what have they dealt with like you? KeKe said, rumors of infidelity. And Tisha said, what rumors have we dealt with when it comes to infidelity? And I'm like, Tisha, you're asking that question. The entire series has been based on the infidelity concerning you and Marsau, as well as Mel and Martell. Like, I didn't even understand that question at all. But again, Tisha said, what rumors have we dealt with regarding infidelity? KeKe said, Tisha, like, girl. Carlos said, has Tisha said anything to you, KeKe, about her believing Marsau was cheating on her? KeKe said, no. Carlos posed the question a different way and said, has Tisha ever speculated that she believes there may be a possibility that he cheated on her? Wanda said, tell the truth. KeKe said, like any woman. And Tisha said, no, no, no. And instead of saying, well, like any woman, Carlos just said, I mean, I really think it's a yes or no. KeKe said, well, like any woman, there may be times in your marriage where you may have doubts that make you look at certain things. Tisha falls back on the couch like, oh, gosh. And Marsau says, baby, don't do all that. And I don't know why Wanda is saying to KeKe, tell the truth, because there are plenty of scenes and episodes, Wanda, where you believed the same thing or speculated the same thing, and you jammed Marsau up about it, and you also jammed Tisha up about it. So, Wanda, don't sit here like you haven't also speculated as the mother-in-law. Finally answering the question with a yes, KeKe said, yes, I do believe that she has faced the issue of whether Marsau was cheating, okay, whether he was unfaithful or not. Carlos said, was this before the show? And KeKe said, yes. Carlos looked at Tisha and said, so is KeKe lying right now? Immediately, Tisha said, yes. KeKe said, girl, I'm lying. Like, really? And Tisha said, KeKe was my girl and she knows a lot about me, and that's why Mel was contacting her. Mel is looking like, girl, the question was, is KeKe lying? You keep roping me into everything. Anyway, Tisha says, so what happened was I found a picture, and it was a picture of a girl in Marsau's phone. Martell puts his hands over his face, and Mel begins to smile because it was giving a look of, I told y'all I wasn't lying. And this woman keeps wanting to make you believe the narrative, you the viewers and everybody else on this stage, that I'm the culprit. But she did find some level of evidence that made her speculate. Okay, all these receipts that Tisha has been claiming for all these seasons, including tonight's episode, that she has never seen anything, no receipts, no pictures, no nothing. And then when KeKe comes out on the stage, boom, bam, all of a sudden Tisha has a recollection about finding a photo of a woman in Marsau's phone. And KeKe is nodding her head like, exactly. So who's the liar? The question was, did you speculate? And I said yes. And you turned right around and told Carlos I'm lying. And in the same breath, you told Carlos that you found a picture of a woman in Marsau's phone, aka a receipt. And the reunion part 1 wraps. It was good. It was fire from beginning to end. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell button. Enjoy this first day of the new year. Be blessed. Take care. Peace.